If you know Gilbert, then you probably know his lively and quirky personality. He's one of the wisest people I know. He always has something knowledgeable to say, and I'm so grateful to call you a friend, and that I have been able to get to know you over the years. I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Hey everyone. Today I'd like to share a little anecdote with y'all and a life lesson that I hope resonates with some of y'all like it resonated with me. A lot of you have known me since middle school. Some of you probably remember me as that awkward, lanky kid who didn't know where he quite fit in. Maybe you remember me walking through Bart's Hall, stumbling every once in a while, kind of like a baby giraffe. Some of you may believe Goofy is the perfect way to describe me. After all, it was one of my nicknames in middle school. Some of you might see me like that. Others might see me as outgoing, or maybe even a little quiet, or really loud or cocky at times. I get it. Everyone has their own definition of Gilbert Stein. And honestly, I don't care for most of those opinions, except for one. Maybe you've heard me say, I don't want to be seen as the complainer. And that's the truth. Sure, I've complained before, and I like to think it's rare, but sometimes I don't even realize I'm doing it. When I catch myself, I get mad at myself, and I think about how I shouldn't have complained at all. Some of you might ask, why beat yourself up over something so small? Well, even the smallest complaint builds on itself. It's like a seed planted in your mind that slowly grows into something much bigger. Before long, you start feeling sorry for yourself, thinking the world's against you, and you become trapped in your own thoughts. The truth is, complaining has no real purpose. When you think about it, there's no justification for it. It only breeds anxiety, promotes anger, and clouds your mind. When writing this, I realized that my ideology sounds a lot like a song by one of my favorite artists. There's a song by John Prine called Bruised Orange, and the chorus really sums up what I'm trying to say. He sings, you can gaze out the window, get mad and get madder, throw your hands in the air, say what does it matter, but it don't do no good to get angry, so help me I know. For a heart stained in anger grows weak and grows bitter, you'll become your own prisoner as you watch yourself sit there, wrapped up in a trap of your very own chain of sorrow. What Brian is trying to say is exactly what I've learned. The destructive nature of holding on to anger and complaints. It locks you in a cycle, and before you know it, you're isolated and bitter, turning inward, letting the weight of your own anger weigh you down. Okay, maybe some of you are thinking, or maybe you don't really care, Gilbert, this is all great, but how did you come to this realization about complaining? Well, about 3 to 3.5 years ago, my father told me a story. My father rarely complains. In fact, when I asked him about his day, his response is always, today marked the pinnacle of my achievement as a human being. At first I thought, what the heck does that even mean? But as he kept saying the phrase for a few days, I understood what it meant. Every day was the best day of his life. Interested by the frequent response, I asked him how he stays so positive all the time. My father began to describe his own father, Gilbert Taylor Stein, and how he became an epicenter of positivity throughout his life. His father would always talk about the good in every situation and work to brighten the days of everyone around him. Unfortunately, after suffering a stroke that left him irreparable, my grandfather's spirit faded away. For the first time, when asked how he was doing by my father, he replied, I'm doing pretty miserable. My father said it felt like my grandfather grabbed him by the shirt collar and made him watch as he hit himself with a baseball bat. About a decade later, my grandfather died, and my father committed to never complaining and never having his kids experience what he did. As I mentioned before, my grandfather's name was Gilbert, just like me. And although I didn't get to meet him, I've heard the stories, and I've seen the pictures, and I have a vision of him in my head. But before not long ago, maybe around Christmas time, that vision wasn't complete. I wondered how Gilbert Taylor got to be the way he did. Where did the no complaining and joyful attitude come from? On Christmas Day, we had a large gathering at my house, as one does, and Mimi was always the epicenter of Christmas. She's the matriarch of the family. As we gathered around our Christmas circle around the living room, I sat down next to Mimi and I asked her how she was doing. Mimi looked me in the eyes and told me she was in pain. When she said this, I remembered the story my father told me about his father, my grandfather. Although this time, it didn't feel like the pain my dad described with the baseball bat. Because Mimi, when she said she was in pain, she began to smile and laugh it off, and it reminded me of how she loved me. When I saw Mimi do this, I realized where this attitude of not complaining and having joy came from. It came from her. When I realized this, I tried to think of a time where I've seen Mimi not smiling. All the times I've known Mimi, I'm not able to think of a time when she was pouty or unnecessarily ornery. And I'm not saying Mimi was never sad or frustrated or hurting. No, not at all. What I am saying is that despite whatever her mood is, she's always decided to smile through it all. As a little boy, seeing his grandmother always smiling and joyful, it began to wear off on me, even though I didn't realize it then. And her attitude didn't just wear off on me. It wore off on Dad, Granddad, Mom, siblings, aunts, uncles, until our whole family was one big pile of joy. In conclusion, I've learned that complaining doesn't do anything for you, no matter how small or justified it may seem. It only locks you in a cycle of negativity, and before you know it, it becomes harder to find joy in anything. When you choose to focus on the good, to smile through the tough times, to laugh off the pain, that's where the real power lies. Mimi taught me that. She taught me and my family that. Even if they don't know it up till now, she didn't just teach me by what she said, but by how she lived. Even in pain, she chose to be joyful. And I realized that attitude didn't just affect her, it rippled throughout our entire family. It made us all stronger, more resilient, and more filled with joy that's hard to put into words. I'm proud to carry that with me, just like my dad carried it from his father. And I'll continue to carry it forward to my kids. We all have the choice to either gaze out the window, get mad and get madder, get stuck in our own chain of sorrow, or to rise above them and find joy in the hardship. So next time life gets tough and those small complaints start to creep in, trying to plant that seed in your head or trap you into a chain of sorrow, think about Mimi, and think about the choice you have, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find yourself smiling through it too. Thank you.